Jay Thomas has started the Infinit-I program at 3 different companies. And obviously you've allowed us to talk to you tonight. I'm going to start off by asking him some questions, but what we would like is if you have any questions, feel free to jump on in and ask them, because really this is about you all learning how this can impact you and his experience on implementing this at a few different places. So with online training has been evolving ever since it's coming into being. I think it started around '98 to be exact, and it's really just rampantly now it's moved on to mobile training. But what was your impression of online training before you started with Infinit-I?
I didn't think it was very comprehensive. Thought maybe that the drivers wouldn't feel that it was, like hands-on experience, that they weren't going to be able to benefit from something that's online. It's not, something that they do every day.
Okay. And with that, how's it changed since being an Infinit-I client?
It's changed drastically. The drivers really like it. Even some of the drivers that have limited skills, they have come in and said that they've liked it. The ease of use today, with the smartphones and the iPads and so forth, the ease of use and the shortness of the programs has been very beneficial.
Okay, and what were you doing before you used Infinit-I?
Basically safety meetings and trying to get the drivers through a terminal, which was not cost effective. You've got one side of operations trying to keep costs down, deadhead miles down, fuel costs down, and to try to route drivers through on a regular basis to go through safety meetings, it's very costly.
Sure. And what other factors play a role in determining to go online, or at least trying online?
Basically the ease of use. I mean, we have multiple terminals all over the country. So, I mean, trying to have somebody, you got drivers in Grand Rapids, or we have drivers in California that never make it out to Grand Rapids or to Somerset, our main terminals. Trying to get them in is impossible. This option gives us the way to provide the same uniform training all terminals without having all the cost associated.
Okay. And what were your main concerns about implementing an online program?
My time.
Your time. That's a big one.
I mean, whether you're, when I started with Infinit-I, I had 300 trucks with the first company. Now I've got 1,136 trucks. It's just your time, you're limited, and to try to roll something out and put it all in place and to design all the programs, that I felt it was going to be overwhelming. That's not the case at all. Actually, Tanya, my rep, does almost all my work for me, so it's wonderful.
So none of your fears really presented themselves?
No, not at all.
Okay. With your companies, I know obviously you started with owner-operators, mm-hmm. and then through Packard and then FX, you were a kind of a combination, is that correct?
Yeah.
And then is Super Service a completely company?
No, that we have, it's about 90% company, 10% owner-operator.
What dynamics versus using owner-operators or trying to train owner-operators versus company have you experienced?
Well, owner-operators tend to be their own breed. They like to feel that they're independent, and that's why they became owner-operators, and they don't like a lot of, they don't want to attend your safety meetings. So one of the things that we used when dealing with owner-operators was to, provide the shortness of the program, the fact that they can do it on their own time, in their own homes, not tie up time. That was a big selling factor for them. They buy into that. Company drivers, it is a little easier environment, but you still have the drivers that, I have no tech skills. I've never turned on a computer. So, but we set up modules inside the companies, or actual terminals at every company that in the driver lounges that they can't get online except to do Infinit-I training. And they really like that because they can do it 1 o'clock in the morning when no one's around.
During the implementation process, did you run into any roadblocks? What were they, and how did you overcome them?
Didn't really have any roadblocks. I had anticipated a lot of them, but we really didn't have any roadblocks. The first one was probably, the biggest roadblock was just getting the message out, because we didn't have the technology with the owner-operators, in-cab technology. But now we put it through their Qualcomms. We can get messages out to them a lot easier.
From an adoption period of when you implemented the program, how long did it take your drivers to adopt to doing online?
Less than 30 days.
Less than 30 days, wow. And that was company or owner-operators?
Mm-hmm.
Anything special that you did, or besides just putting the terminals in your own locations?
Well, one of the things I did is I made sure that when we set them up, I set up all the drivers to their driver managers. So you have fleet managers, driver managers, however you structure your organization. You want to, at least in my case, I structured it the same way. So that if one particular driver manager wants to look at how many of his drivers have completed their training, he can get those reports. And then each week, Infinit-I sends you a wonderful report that tells you who hasn't completed training and who has. Those go directly out to the driver managers, and they can manage their own fleet, as opposed to me trying to manage 1,036 drivers. Each one of them are held accountable for their own drivers.
When you were at, let's say, one of your previous locations or previous jobs where you had a much smaller fleet, did you still run it yourself, or did you still have driver managers on the program?
Initially, I ran it myself at Packard. And it's still very easy to use, even with 200 drivers. You just get your report, and then I would basically download that into an Excel and send it out to the driver managers. I'm a little wiser now, I guess, with age. So now I like to delegate, or let the driver managers who manage those drivers actually make sure that the performance is there.
What kind of results have you seen or experienced through using the Infinit-I program?
Right now, we're actually seeing, in just a short time at Super Service, we've already seen a decrease in some of our preventable accidents. We've seen a significant decrease because my first rollout, the first month, was on CSA training. So they had a pretty extensive CSA training. We've seen a decrease by almost 20% in unsafe moving violations. We also, because Smith Systems is in it, we implemented the Smith System program into that first month also. If anybody's using Smith System, obviously that's really changes how drivers perform. They think about what they're doing.
Sure. Were those results that you expected, or were they kind of a surprise to you?
Actually a surprise. Even though I'd had it and used it in 2 other companies, I'm seeing, I think maybe because of the experience of how to roll it out and having a little bit more knowledge, which the boot camp will provide,
Sure.
On how to use the system, the more tools you have, the more effective it's going to be.
And how much training are you throwing at your drivers? Is it 1 a month? Is it 2 or 3 a month? 1 or 2 or 3 a quarter?
6 modules. You have to complete 6 modules per month, which is about, what, 30 minutes of training, if you look at it. So it's not a lot, but a lot of them are doing it while they're sitting in shippers and consignees. They're doing it on their smartphones, their iPads, and stuff like that. So it's not really taking up their own time.
And are you using any custom content, or is it basically all the vertical Alliance Group Infinit-I content?
Right now, it is just the Infinit-I content. We are developing. What we're going to be doing is rolling out part of our orientation into that program, so that drivers can, as everybody knows, drivers getting them into orientation and back out on the road making money is important. So we're going to start rolling out some of our existing modules in orientation into the Infinit-I program, so that drivers can take that prior to coming. and then we can concentrate while they're there on more hands-on defensive driving.
And how has Infinit-I impacted your job itself?
Made it a whole lot easier. Whole lot easier.
Can you just expand a little bit?
Well, it frees up resources. I've got 2 other people that work under me as regional directors, and when you're trying to spend time routing drivers in, getting them through, spending the time buying pizzas and feeding them during all these training programs, holding them every week in order to accommodate at least a once-a-month training, takes a lot of manpower and a lot of hours away from what you could be doing in managing other areas of safety. Infinit-I relieves all that. I mean, with my rep and the reports that we get, basically that all those man hours are freed up now.
And you've mentioned your rep a couple times. What is it like working with the Vertical Alliance Group Client Services team?
It's great. My rep calls me probably 2 or 3 times a week. And at first, I was like, man, I don't have time for this, because I was trying to put it off a little bit. And I realized that all she was doing was making my job easier. So once you get through the implementation and setting it up exactly how you want it, it's just managing. She calls, makes sure everything's running right. If there's any hiccups where somebody hasn't completed, like we're doing, because of our satellite locations, we're a Hazmat carrier. You have to do the routine Hazmat recertification.
Yeah.
You can do that online without having to bring them into the terminal. So she has a list of my people that are due to expire, and she will call me and remind me, hey, you got these guys due. You want to let them know. So it's really beneficial. It's like having an extra safety person there.
Perfect. Let's open it up to the floor. Any questions anybody has for Jay? David?
What happens, I know you get the report, your driver managers get the report. Do you have any driver managers who, oh, I'll let Charlie slide, or I'll let Sally slide? You haven't quite got them all in yet, and how do you know that they're all getting the training that they're supposed to, and that you ain't got 4, 5, 10 drivers who haven't did the training, and then what do you do with those drivers?
Well, you get a report every month or every week, basically, of the drivers who have completed and the drivers who haven't completed. Some of them might start a module and not finish it, so you have an incomplete report also. But every one of your drivers has its own login, and we require that they change their password after they log in. So we have security there. And all the driver managers are held accountable. That's part of their bonus, is to make sure that their drivers have, well, that we have several things we measure them on, but that's one of them. That you have to have, the higher the percentage of drivers that have completed each month, the higher your bonus, the more points you get.
That answer your question, David?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Malin?
You talk about how your drivers access the program. Because I see a very small percentage of our drivers that actually have laptops. We recently rolled out smartphones for most of them, although we're still at only about 65, 70%. That's a challenge of itself. What device do you see your drivers most often using when they access the Infinit-I program?
I haven't actually looked to see which ones. I know that there is a small percentage that come into the terminal and use their computers, or use our computers. Most of them that we've talked to said that they're using their smartphones. I've actually got on, because I have my own login to test it. So I got on and actually went through 3 modules in about the same amount of time on my smartphone, on my Android, as it took to do on the laptop. So I'm not for sure. I haven't seen a report that actually shows what they're using to log in. But actually, my login percentage at Super Service had a little younger clientele, but than some of the owner-operators. But it's actually surprised me.
That answer.
Yep.
David?
related to the login, how do you assure that Ralph and Cindy and Billy is the one doing it and it ain't their wife or girlfriend or kid, or do you have any sort of, you know, feedback you get from them or a little test, or how do you assure that the driver was the one who really got on there and did it?
Well, I'm not sure that you actually have 100% that you got the driver taking it. There is a test after each module that they have to take for the completion of it. And, you know, Infinity does have it set up with passwords and user IDs and so forth, so unless they shared it and had their girlfriend or wife do it, you know, you don't know for sure. But
We also, tomorrow you'll see, we have an acknowledgement question that it comes up, and you have to verify who you are.
Right.
Now, obviously, you can cheat and you can get around it, but what we look at here is how you protect your company. You're doing your due diligence, and I don't know that anybody's going to be 100% honest, and I don't know that no matter, there is, and Steve has it on his computer, he does have a fingerprint scanner and so forth, but when you start putting in protocol for such security measurements, the whole industry has to have it or we can't put it in. It doesn't make sense. So at this time, it's pretty basic. We can actually lock it down to certain web addresses, and so if you want them doing it just in your shop where you can eye it, we can do it that way. But for the most part, there's not really a way of 100% making sure nobody cheats.
Well, that brings up, you made the comment about locking it down to, I'm assuming like an IP address.
Yes, sir.
Could you lock it down to a specific smartphone or a group of smartphones?
Because they pick up different IP addresses depending where they're at in the country,
Right.
I don't think that's feasible at this time with technology.
Just on a different subject, one of my concerns, you know, the drivers, seems to be more and more things, you know, these guys are out on the road, we start losing the relationship with them. And, you know, okay, training a guy, we are training, okay, it is costly to bring the guy in, but you're helping build that relationship with him and you know the driver. Do you lose some of that, do you find, or do you find other ways that you now have that time available to do other things, or how do you still maintain that, to touch that driver? You know,
yeah, the drivers, with the exception of maybe my satellite locations out in, you know, Bakersfield, California, where I'm probably not going to see them unless I get on a plane and fly out there. The rest of them typically are going to get through your terminal, and the fact now is they're going to come see you, they're going to bring their permit books in to have you check them, and they're going to talk to you, and they're not having to worry about having to sit down and listen to your safety meeting necessarily, or you know, some of the other things that you need to talk to them about training wise, because now you can spend time more one-on-one with them.
And Jeff, one of the things that we've had other clients tell us is that they will actually record messages from the president going out to them, kind of give them a status update, what's going on with the company, doing things that really substitutes for the long periods where they don't have that touch. So it's an added versus a subtracted on that aspect.
You make them take a quiz on that too?
Look, Jeff, an attractive CEO.
One of the things that to kind of go along with that is they can put content on your login page also. So if you feed, like we put our newsletter up there, so when you first log in, there's links on there to, you know, you can put, you know, if you've got a company picnic or you've got, you know, certain messages you want to send out to your drivers, you can put that on their login so that it's not a testable item. But we put our newsletters each month on there so you can still get messages that typically we weren't getting out to the drivers. I mean, we try to give them the newsletter, but they're traveling. We don't have all their email addresses. That's one of the things we are working on, is to put a request on there for when the driver logs in that we capture his email address, so then it makes your job even easier, because if he doesn't complete a task, it'll email him. If it's a certificate, it'll email them. They can get their certificates. So there's a lot of powerful tools in the Infinity program.
Perfect. Any other?
Another question, and I'll probably answer most of these again tomorrow, I'm sure, but in the meantime, what's your experience been with using either a training program or a training document or something outside of what's offered in the original Infinit-I package? I mean, you've got a list of 200 and some odd videos, but have you used anything else outside of that?
Not with Super Service, but with TSE and FX, where I came from. We actually had other modules. We took it all the way into an HR level. So new employees in the office would come in and they would have to sit through the introduction, like Hazmat, hours of service, and so forth. For driver managers, we had different programs for office personnel, payroll. It can be as simple as your normal company orientation about the history of the company. Some of those things that you want to get out of the way, or you have your own voice over PowerPoints, you can load those on. You could load, J.J. Keller's stuff. You can load anything basically you want on there, so you don't have to just use theirs.
What we typically tell you, if it's sitting on your shelf, we can put it up. We still have companies today, God bless them, that send us VCR tapes.
Yes, we do.
And just know, if you send us a VCR tape, it's the best it's going to ever be. We can't digitally enhance it. But anything from documents, we have several clients that will do documents to newsletters, to PowerPoints with voiceovers, and we'll show you tomorrow what those look like, so you can kind of get the experience. We do have a production team if you need any kind of production as well. We can walk you through how to do certain things, or we can come out and do it for you, depending on the size of your project. But your smartphones, the camera on your iPhone, this is a phenomenal tool. You can actually walk up, film a driver doing what you want them to do, or even what you don't want them to do, and then send us that video file. We can have it uploaded rather quickly, and then add test questions behind it, and as simple as that. So you're not locked into just our content, because you're in a specialized area, so I understand that. David?
I heard Jay say he had a bonus program for the driver managers, et cetera, to make sure that they did it. Is there anything for the drivers? Or is that just part of?
The drivers have a bonus program also. That's part of their safety bonus. And so we look at fuel, MPGs, looking at their miles per gallon and their on-time delivery, whether they have preventable crashes, CSA violations, and whether they've completed their training. If they are good in all those areas, then they can get their bonus.
All right, Jay, what's one of the best things that you like working with Vertical Alliance Group?
Well, you're always coming up with new content, and staying up with the times. That's a very good thing. The customer service is outstanding. There isn't any company that I've ever worked with, no matter what service they're offering, that has customer service like Vertical Alliance and Infinit-I. So they make your job a whole lot easier. And they didn't pay me to say that.
Well, we would have.
Can you say that again? Any other questions for Jay? I know we'll have him the next day and a half with us as well. So if you didn't have any questions now, feel free to write them down. And he said he'd answer any questions that you want to ask him.